What if the anxiety that haunts your days is not a problem to be silenced, but a messenger trying to awaken you from a life half-lived? What if the unease you've tried to numb, avoid, or suppress is not a flaw in your brain, but a call from your soul? A signal that somewhere along the line you abandoned something essential within yourself? This is the silent tragedy of the modern world. To wake up in midlife and realize you've been chasing all the wrong things, obeying all the wrong voices, and slowly drifting away from the life you were meant to live. Carl Jung warned of this precise danger, that one could, in all outward appearances, function, succeed, and survive, yet still miss the meaning of their own existence entirely. Today, the medical world often reaches for pills as the first response to anxiety or emotional pain. And while such treatments may bring temporary relief, they risk treating the symptom while ignoring the root. Jung believed that most anxiety is not merely a chemical imbalance, but a spiritual imbalance. The deeper source lies not in the neurons, but in the neglected soul. The growing emptiness felt by so many is not a clinical condition, but a consequence of living out of alignment with one's inner truth. In our attempts to anesthetize discomfort, we've confused being functional with being fulfilled. We've been taught to suppress the very emotions that might be trying to rescue us. Jung called these feelings psychological warning lights. He believed they were not to be feared, but understood. Not medicated away, but interpreted. They arise when we stray too far from who we truly are. Anxiety, in Jung's view, is not an enemy. It is a shadowy guide, an inner signal that the path you're on may be slowly suffocating your essence. If left ignored, this discomfort doesn't disappear. It deepens. It becomes a quiet grief, an unconscious despair that colors every decision, every relationship, and every year that slips by unnoticed. You don't need to live enslaved to this silent erosion. You don't need to settle for a life that feels tolerable but hollow. What you need is not to eliminate anxiety at all costs, but to listen to what it is pointing toward. Beneath the surface, your anxiety may be carrying a sacred message, that the life you've built is out of sync with the truth of who you are. And until you face this truth, gently, courageously, and consciously, you may continue to chase cures that only cover the symptoms of a deeper spiritual forgetting. This is not about blaming yourself. It is about reclaiming your life. And Jung offers a path to do just that. Most people enter therapy hoping to be saved from discomfort, not realizing that what they truly need is to develop the strength to carry it. Carl Jung never promised a path of ease, nor did he offer escape. The first step for him was not a prescription of relief, but a mirror of truth. He invited people into deep psychological insight, not just about themselves, but about the very nature of life. And what he taught first was this: life is not meant to be easy. Those who live expecting it to be so are doomed to perpetual frustration. There is a quiet kind of suffering that comes from believing life should be soft, painless, and predictable. That belief is not only false, it is harmful. Jung would often challenge this illusion directly. With clarity, he reminded his patients that suffering is not the enemy, but a vital part of human growth. Struggle is not a detour from the path. It is the path. When people came to him hoping to be cured of difficulty, he offered instead a deeper truth, that our difficulties are not a malfunction of life, but a function of being alive. He once wrote that man needs difficulty, for without it there can be no psychological health. Difficulty invites strength. Challenge calls forth character. Without resistance, there is no muscle, no maturity, and no meaning. The point, Jung insisted, was not to eliminate difficulty, but to learn how to stand within it without being crushed. When we finally accept that life is hard, something within us reorganizes. We stop expecting the world to bend in our favor and instead begin shaping ourselves to meet the world with presence and courage. It is a subtle but profound shift from expecting life to give us ease to committing ourselves to grow stronger. This shift places us on solid ground. We become less reactive, less bitter, less entitled. And from that place, real change becomes possible. We begin to respect the role of hardship in our becoming. We see discomfort not as a punishment, but as a teacher. And slowly, we build a life not on illusion, but on inner power. On the other hand, those who remain entangled in the belief that life should be easy will always search for someone or something to blame when it isn't. They will resist hardship instead of integrating it. They will waste precious time waiting for ease rather than forging strength. Jung saw this delusion as one of the great psychological traps of modernity, the expectation that life should be comfortable and that discomfort is a sign of failure. But life has always been a battleground, not in the sense of destruction, but in the sense of testing what is real within us. It tests our beliefs, our resilience, our will to evolve. And if it were not so, Jung believed, life itself would lose its vitality. There was another crucial insight Jung offered, one that unsettled many, that the problems we face are rarely rooted in some distant past, but are alive in the present moment. While our past may have shaped us, it is in the now that our choices live. And yet many people prefer to dig endlessly through memory, hoping to explain their paralysis rather than confront it. Jung observed this tendency and called it what it is: avoidance. We often blame others, or our childhood, or the world, not because it is false, but because it allows us to delay the difficult task of transformation. Change is threatening. It means letting go of who we have been. It means owning our part. And that is far more frightening than simply understanding it. Jung wrote that everyone, not just those in pain, instinctively tries to locate their problems outside themselves. It is easier to believe that our limitations arose on their own, long ago, than to confront the possibility that they are being reinforced by how we live today. But to do so is to surrender our power. For when we accept responsibility for the present, no matter how we arrived here, we reclaim the ability to change it. And in that moment, our suffering begins to transform into strength. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when the mirror no longer flatters. It distorts. It exposes. It begins to reflect not who we hope to be, but what we've hidden away. And it is here that Jung's first true intervention begins, not with a soothing balm or distant philosophy, but with the raw courage to face the darkness within. He called this darkness the shadow, a term that does not imply evil, but rather refers to the unaccepted, the denied, and the repressed aspects of our own psyche. It is everything we refuse to see in ourselves, buried in the unconscious, not because it is foreign, but because it once caused pain, shame, or rejection. For many, the shadow forms early. Perhaps you were told as a child that your anger made you bad, that your confidence was arrogant, or that your sensitivity was too much. So you swallowed those parts. You became what was expected. And yet those fragments did not disappear. They fell into the basement of the psyche, growing darker the longer they remained in the dark. Jung understood this psychic fragmentation deeply. Everyone carries a shadow, he wrote, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The shadow does not stay quiet forever. What is unconscious is not inactive. It waits, it festers, and eventually it erupts. This is why Jung believed that the first true act of transformation requires a direct confrontation with this inner stranger, not to judge it, not to destroy it, but to understand it. When we deny the shadow, we lose all agency over its influence. The parts of us we reject begin to act out indirectly through self-sabotage, projection, passive aggression, addiction, and quiet despair. But when we bring them into the light of our awareness, something remarkable happens. We regain power. Anything conscious can be corrected, Jung wrote, but anything that slips into the unconscious is beyond the reach of correction. That which we refuse to face ends up controlling our lives from the shadows. Yet this shadow is not merely a vault of flaws. Paradoxically, it is also a treasury of forgotten power. Many of the qualities we repress are not harmful, but vital. Buried talents, fierce truths, and assertive instincts exiled long ago. A woman raised to please may have repressed her ability to say no. A man taught to endure may have buried his tears. A child mocked for imagination may have silenced her creative genius. Society has its expectations and the soul pays the price. But Jung reminds us, the shadow contains qualities which would in a way vitalize and embellish human existence, but convention forbids. Reclaiming the shadow, then, is not just an act of courage, but an act of integration. It is how we stop leaking energy into endless cycles of self-doubt and instead begin to stand in our wholeness. But how do we bring the shadow to light? One way is through honest self-inquiry. Observe what triggers you. Whose personality irritates you? Whose strengths feel threatening? Whom do you judge most harshly? These are psychic clues. Jung noted that we often project our own rejected traits onto others, mistaking our disowned self as someone else's flaw. That friend's arrogance may reflect your own suppressed desire for confidence. That relative's stubbornness may mirror your own fear of setting boundaries. Another way to uncover the shadow is through reflection after mistakes. When you act out of character, sabotage your own joy, or lash out without cause, pause. Instead of justifying, ask, what part of me did this? What am I not seeing? Self-criticism, when rooted in curiosity rather than shame, becomes a tool for liberation. As Jung put it, with a little self-criticism, one can see through the shadow. This is not about blaming yourself, but about reclaiming your agency. You are not your worst impulse, but you must own it before you can outgrow it. Shadow work is not comfortable. It is often messy, inconvenient, and humbling. But so is any real healing. The point is not to become perfect, but to become whole. The moment you stop fighting parts of yourself is the moment you stop wasting energy on self-denial. And when that energy returns to you, so does clarity, so does strength, so does the will to move forward in life without abandoning yourself again. To face your shadow is to reclaim the parts of you that got lost in the process of becoming who the world told you to be. And in doing so, you stop betraying yourself in the dark and begin becoming yourself in the light. When a soul feels hollow and burdened by a sense of aimlessness, the psyche does not merely crave comfort, it cries out for meaning. It is not enough to numb the ache or distract the emptiness with fleeting pleasures. What the soul seeks is a symbolic life, a life imbued with purpose beyond survival, one that resonates with the deeper currents of existence. That is why, in addition to bringing unconscious shadows into awareness, one of the central threads in the fabric of healing is discovering a personal and sacred sense of meaning. For Jung, the path to healing did not lie solely in clinical methods or surface interventions. It required something far more profound, a reorientation of one's entire being toward the recognition that one is not a passive bystander in life, but a living participant in a cosmic drama, an actor in what he called the divine drama of life. To illustrate this, Jung once recounted a moment of profound insight during his travels when he met a chief of the Pueblo tribe in the early 20th century. In their conversation, the chief spoke of a daily ritual, not born of superstition, but of sacred responsibility. Gesturing toward the rising sun, he said, "That is our Father. We must help him daily to rise over the horizon and walk across heaven. And we do not do it for ourselves alone. We do it for America. We do it for the entire world." To the modern mind, this statement may seem naive or mystical, even irrational. Yet in this simple expression lies a truth that modern society has all but forgotten: that a life centered around symbolic responsibility gives birth to psychological resilience. For this tribe, life was not fragmented into work and rest, consumption and escape. Life was woven into a tapestry of sacred significance. Their actions, though seemingly ordinary, were charged with divine purpose. And the result was striking. These individuals were not tormented by the inner hollowness that plagues so many in modern culture. They were not afflicted by the neuroses, the obsessions, the compulsive anxieties that drive people into isolation or self-destruction. They did not need daily medicine to carry them through their days. Their meaning was their medicine. They arose each morning not merely to survive another day, but to participate in a cosmic act. Their ritual was their alignment with the sacred. Their symbolism was their strength. In Jung's words, these people have no problems. They have their daily life, their symbolic life. They rise with the feeling of great and divine responsibility. They are sons of the Son, the Father, and their duty is to help the Father over the horizon, not for themselves alone, but for the entire world. And so the question quietly arises: what is your son? What is the act of devotion you have forgotten? In a world where so many wake up lost, weighed down by a life stripped of soul, perhaps the deeper affliction is not depression, but disconnection from nature, from myth, from meaning. The antidote may not lie in stimulation or success, but in the humble rediscovery of sacred responsibility. Not grand gestures, but daily alignment. Not control, but contribution. To stop wasting your life is not to add more noise. It is to listen again for the call beneath it all, to remember that you, too, are part of something vast, something unfolding, something divine. What Jung observed in the haunted eyes of the restless woman was not simply wanderlust or curiosity, but the silent despair of a soul untethered from meaning. She was not traveling toward something, but away from something, away from the barren, aching truth that her life, in its current form, had no inner justification. Her existence, as Jung described, was grotesquely banal, stripped of symbol, lacking center, and void of sacred purpose. Her endless movement masked a deeper stillness, the kind born not from peace, but from emotional paralysis. A life where, should she vanish tomorrow, the world would not tremble because she had never truly arrived in herself. She was not living, but merely surviving, passing through landscapes and lovers and cities like a ghost without roots. And tragically, her condition is not rare. It is, in fact, one of the most widespread spiritual illnesses of our modern age. Many in the Western world wear the same expression. They may not all be travelers in the literal sense, but they are equally possessed by the need to escape their own emptiness. Some chase affection, hoping another's gaze will confirm they exist. Some chase wealth, as if accumulation could fill the hollowness within. Others chase visibility, dreaming that if enough strangers see them, perhaps they will see themselves. Yet beneath these compulsions lies the same unspoken wound, a life that no longer feels real, that does not sing with meaning, that has lost its alignment with something sacred and enduring. They are not driven by inspiration, but by the unbearable weight of a meaningless existence. And it is precisely this absence of meaning, not failure, not pain, not imperfection, that slowly wastes the human soul. Jung did not condemn the woman for her seeking. He understood it. What he offered was not shame, but invitation. He imagined a different possibility. Suppose, he said, she could awaken one morning and speak from a different place, not from exile, but from essence. Suppose she could look to the horizon and whisper, "I am the daughter of the moon, and every night I help my mother rise into the sky." In that one symbolic shift, everything transforms. She would no longer be a passive sufferer of her circumstances, but a participant in the divine unfolding. Her steps would no longer be random, but rhythmic. Her pain would no longer be meaningless, but alchemical. She would no longer be nothing. She would belong not to a role or career, not to external approval, but to the living mythos of the world. This, Jung said, is what gives peace. This is what heals. It is not the outer story that must be grand, but the inner one that must be true. A person can raise a child, sweep a floor, sit in stillness, and if they know within themselves that their life is part of something greater, then they are already free. In this way, meaning is not bestowed from the outside, it is birthed from within. It is not inherited from culture, it is carved through conscious participation with life. What saves a person is not status or acclaim, but the quiet knowing that they are living in alignment with something eternal. Jung never asked us to imitate the Pueblo and mythology or to adopt rituals that do not speak to our own soul. What he did ask was far more difficult. He asked us to take responsibility for the architecture of our own meaning. In a time where our ancestors' myths no longer hold us and our institutions often fail to nourish us, the task of crafting a life that makes sense falls squarely on our own shoulders. This is both a burden and a blessing. It is the heaviest task we will ever carry, and yet it is the only one worth lifting. To heal from anxiety, to dissolve the chronic ache of depression, to stop wasting your life in restless seeking. None of this can be achieved by outer change alone. You must find the inner pattern, the secret constellation of symbols that makes your life feel significant to you. For some, that meaning will be found in devotion to justice or in the creation of art. For others, it may be discovered in raising children with presence, in building something with care, in tending the earth, or in quiet acts of service that will never be praised but will always be felt. The form does not matter. The truth behind it does. This is the soul's true nourishment, not pleasure, not perfection, but participation. To know you are a thread in the tapestry, not floating above life, but woven into it. To feel that your existence is not accidental, but archetypal. That your presence makes a difference. That your life, however ordinary it may appear on the surface, has touched the world in ways only you could. This is what ends the cycle of compulsive seeking. This is what finally brings the soul home. And so we return to Jung's simple yet powerful insight, that the only life worth living is the one that feels meaningful. Not by someone else's standard, not in comparison to a curated world online, but in the quiet, personal truth that lives in your own heart. If you can find the thread of meaning that makes your life feel sacred, then no matter where you are or what you do, you will not be wasting your life. You will be living it, not for show, not for escape, but for something real, something eternal, something that was waiting for you all along. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.